Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. We are at 17865 Southwest Yaquina Court here in Tualatin. I describe everything as if you are standing in the street facing the front of the house. Right now we are just off to the right of the front doorway. Right over there. You've got two hose bibs out here. The cleanout sits underneath. This hose bib is inactive right now, but it's a good landmark. Cleanout sits directly underneath it. 4-inch cast iron. We're going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water is a-running. We're going to zero out here at the base of the cleanout. Once we get straightened out here. Old cast iron cleanouts never want to force you the direction they're supposed to. There we go. Anyway, we're going to zero out here at the base. We'll get some gunk cleaned off the camera lens real quick and off we will go. In this era of line here, we're very typically going to see cast iron probably reach all the way out to right around the right of way, and then we'll often see a transition there to concrete pipe. That's pretty typical. And we'll take a good close look at the flow line. Once the line is drained off, we're seeing a little bit of pitting and roughness there, but once the water's gone, we'll get a much better look at things. Sometimes you just get a little bit of scale build up along the water line. Nowadays, with the advent of stuff like trenchless epoxy lining, can behoove you, especially with a line that is under so much concrete, to get ahead of things so you can take advantage of trenchless options. If we start seeing enough wear and tear that it makes sense to justify updating. This one might stay cast iron all the way to the main. Yep, it sure did. Pretty rare thing to see from this era. Alright, and generally speaking, if you're going to have old pipe products, cast iron is usually the stuff you want to have. So, anyway, here at 74 feet to the main, we're going to go locate that really quick while the pipe drains off. We'll pull back and take a better look here. Alright, located the camera head successfully. I did put a reference marking down the street. You'll see there's actually two markings out there marking the main. It looks like the city did a marking at some point in the past. The paint's pretty faded. My locate's coming in a couple feet beyond that locate. It could be because the angle we're at here, let's see if we're in a downward trajectory. And the manhole down the street lines up better with the city's marking. My locate out there was coming in very, very clear, about 5 foot 8 inches. So just be aware, they're not off by a major amount, but sometimes main laterals don't always run dead straight down the street. Sometimes they kind of veer. So anyway, just be aware of that. I'm getting around 5 foot 8 inches deep there. All right, I am periodically putting some markings down, not necessarily for repair purposes, but mostly in the event you redo the driveway so you know where things are. Right now it looks like the line actually runs through the yard. I just marked down there right by the curb, about 4'10", 4'11" deep there. So, as it sits right now, pipe bottom here still looks intact. We are getting some roughness to the pipe, a little bit of pitting in some places, some scale buildup, but nowhere the line's perforated through or anything like that. But spots like this right here, you can see how we have kind of a trough that's forming, and it's not everywhere throughout the line, but spots like this, you can see how we're kind of down inside of a groove. It's called channeling or troughing, depending on who you talk to. So the end result of all cast iron, if it exists for long enough in the ground, is eventually the cast iron will rot through in the flow line. So you have kind of the beginning stages of that taking place here in a few different locations. All right, about 4'10", 5 feet deep here. We're just starting to come into the driveway. I've taken some photos. In the photo, you'll see my locate wand. The direction it's pointing is the direction of how the pipe is running there. Do another one when we get back in closer here, just so anyone working on things knows where stuff is at. About 3 foot 8 inches right there. We're just coming back into the flower bed. Again, took another photo there. And then once you get off into like down by the sidewalk area, you can pretty much eyeball where the line runs. Once it turns away from the house, it runs pretty darn straight all the way out. Anyway, the pipe here is getting, it is still in a functional state as it sits right now. We don't have debris buildup or anything like that anywhere, blockage evidence, but it's reaching that point where, you know, especially if you want to take advantage of something like a trenchless repair system, you don't want to wait too much longer to do that. You know, if you're, especially as it relates to stuff in the roadway, under driveways, that's where that can get more expensive. However, if you're already doing something like a driveway redo, that sometimes you're kind of killing two birds with one stone in a lot of cases, and you can sometimes get a much better price point when you're already doing another project sitting right over the top of it. So as the line currently sits right now, though, the pipe is not perforated through, but it is showing its age. It's got a fair amount of roughness in the flow line. We've got some stages of channeling taking place in areas throughout the line. So it's at a state right now where, you know, I wouldn't wait a whole lot longer to do something like a liner on it. Again, if you're going to go the trenchless route, you want to do that before the line completely wears out. Once the line gets too worn out to where something like settling can start taking place, bellies in the line, things like that, you can often lose the ability to do a repair like that, and you have to do it in a more traditional manner, requiring digging. So this is one of those where the line runs straight enough that you probably would have to put in something like a secondary clean out to have a better access point in, but you could trenchlessly update, at least from what I'm seeing here, essentially the entire sewer line, other than maybe putting in a clean out access. So it's not a point right now where the cast iron is necessarily leading to problems. Otherwise you'd expect to see more buildup, but that rougher texture there can be problematic when you have larger households with higher volumes of debris going down the line. That rougher texture is just more prone to debris hanging up in the line. So if nothing else, what I would at least do would be to consult a liner company in the event you decide to redo the driveway but wait on the sewer line for a little bit. You at least want to check into the feasibility of doing something like a liner. This line, it shoots under probably about 25 feet or more of driveway, sidewalk, and the street. So there's a lot of concrete to deal with here. So this is one of those lines where trenchless is a really nice way to go. So if you can at least make sure that there's the feasibility there to do a liner on it, you could potentially still redo the driveway without necessarily redoing the line. And if it comes to it, you at least at that point know if you have the ability to deal with the line after the fact without having to go rip up a driveway. That is the beauty of trenchless repairs. So as the line sits right now, it has adequate flow to the main lateral. It's in rougher, condition wise, but pretty par for the course for its age. So line is functioning at this time, but it's at a point where I would be at least contemplating doing something to update it. It's one of those things that may get that roughness, the channeling is something that may very well get nitpicked during a real estate transaction. It's one of those things I would be pointing out to my buyers, for instance, that the line's at a point where you want to at least start considering the update option, especially with the advent of some of these newer trenchless repair options that are very convenient and often save a lot of money in some of these cases. But I would certainly price out the cost difference of doing a trenchless liner versus traditional dig. That liner still would be advantageous for the roadway part of the sewer line, as that's unrelated to the driveway entirely by that point. But the rest of it there's a lot of it you could deal with, at least the driveway part of it, while you're doing a driveway project.